Back, you're watching the front row, standing in for Kisa Wandera. My name is Aby Agina, and we are seeking to get some solutions into the tough times that the country continues to face. Here on today's edition of the front row, remember you can engage with us on our social media handles at KT News KE, and you can tweet me at Agina Aby. I can clearly see quite a lot of feedback coming in. We'll be able to sample your views in a short while. But let's get back to our discussion at this hour. Well, as Kenyans struggle to adjust to the newly revised fuel prices, KTN's Noah Kipkemboi explains just how these prices got this high.
Just before settling from a difficult 2020, Kenyans are yet to come to terms with the new prices. The latest figures of fuel pump prices from the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority were marked by huge adjustments, with super petrol skyrocketing by 8 shillings and 19 cents, diesel by 5 shillings and 51 cents, and kerosene by 5 shillings and 32 cents. So, how were these figures arrived at? First, EPRA noted that the landed cost, which is the total charge associated with getting an oil shipment to the port of Mombasa, had risen. The average landed cost for super petrol shot up by 20.93%, of diesel by 13.64%, and that of kerosene by 14.6%. The cost of MAB and crude oil lifted in January also grew by 11.5% to $55 and 27 cents per barrel. Early last year, MAB and oil price had crashed to $17 and 64 cents due to economic slowdown from COVID-19. After the product has landed in Kenya, another cost that is factored in is the transportation, storage and distribution charges. These charges include pipeline transportation from Mombasa to Nairobi, pipeline and depot losses, and delivery costs to petrol stations within 40 kilometers of Nairobi. The companies that have purchased the oil products, known as the oil marketing companies, also add their respective margins to recoup their investment. Finally, taxes and levies add up to the final straw to retail fuel price. In July 2020, the government increased the Petroleum Development Levy from 40 cents per litre to 5 shillings and 40 cents. Other levies are Road Maintenance Levy, Petroleum Regulatory Levy, Railway Development Levy, Anti-Adulteration Levy, Merchant Shipping Levy, and Import Declaration Levy. Excess duty, which is adjusted annually to align with inflation, rose by 1 shilling per litre for super petrol and 50 cents for a litre of diesel and kerosene. The value-added tax, currently at 8%, is also factored in. So, to get the final retail price for fuel in Nairobi, the product or landed cost is added to distribution and storage costs, marketer's margin, and taxes and levies. Noah Kipkemboi, KTN News.
All right, that report very in-depth, just highlighting how we got here when it comes to the fuel prices. Well, across the region, Kenya is among the highest. And of course, this has been influenced by the taxes that come along with the fuel formula. Well, back to my conversation with my panelists, and let me bring in Mr. Stephen Mutoro from COFEC. Well, looking at the big picture, for many Kenyans, it is the cost of maize flour. Are they able to get their unga at the end of the day? Are they able to pay their rents? Are they able to commute to their day-to-day activities? For an economy of our size, what would be some of the key issues that we need to sit on the table once again and say, how do we transmit an economic policy that will touch on the common man living down there in the slum, down there in the factory setup? How do we get them on board?
Abby, I think for me that's a very interesting question. I had an occasion this morning to meet with members of the National Assembly Committee of Delegated Legislation over issues of fuel. And my argument then as at now is that our fuel, actually what fuels our economy is petroleum. Anytime you interfere with petroleum, so that you have over 50% of the price, 56 out of probably 115 or so, you affect everything. you actually affect the food. People are not able to put their food on the table. You are not able to move from point A to B. Issues of transport, issues about fares. You know, a whole issue. Even electricity is dependent on fuel, because you need fuel, particularly diesel, to do the thermal, stabilize the thermal energy and what have you. So when we touch the taxation on fuel, we actually are fueling ourselves out of the economy. And my argument is simple. It appears that in this country, the easiest point, the weakest point you can lamp on costs and even raise revenue within a very short time is always fuel. How does that explain that? The Standard newspaper on Sunday quoted a high-ranking member of the National Assembly saying that part of the road maintenance levy goes to members of the Transport Committee of the National Assembly. Now, that road maintenance levy is 18 shillings per litre. You have excise duty at 21 shillings and 95 cents. Then on the morning of 10th of July 2020, we woke up to a Gazette notice by the Honorable Munyes, the Minister for Petroleum, and he was actually increasing petroleum development levy from 40 cents to 5 shillings and 40 cents. That's about 1,250% increment. So our argument has been simple. The moment you touch fuel, the moment you make it very difficult for people to afford fuel, you actually affect the entire life. And the reason is simple. The reason is simple. Even the petroleum development levy that we put in place, nobody knows how much has been collected so far. I saw one of the dailies talking about 10 billion. From our modest assessment of what the petroleum development levy fund that may have been collected, given that there was lower consumption of about 20% or so on COVID, I think we expect that it's not anything less than 20 billion that should have been collected in the last 6 months to January from July. So in a nutshell, we are saying that the moment you affect fuel, you affect food, you affect movement, you affect livelihoods, you affect everybody, including even matatus. I mean, how do you move from point A? In fact, I really feel for people who must move from one point to another, then manufacturers also are using fuel, you know, to power their production of food. So we expect that food prices are going to go higher. We expect that transport costs are going to go higher. And we're talking about inflation, which of course comes at a time when the cost of credit is completely unaffordable. So I can only say this in conclusion, Abby, that we need to make a deliberate move to remove at least 70% of the current taxations on fuel, because another thing that we are also staring at is the road tolling. Remember, there are plans to toll our roads, including the ones that are already built on loans and grants. Save for the expressway, I think we are going to stay in a situation where even road tolls are going to make it very difficult on top of the fuel crisis. So I would say we need to rethink the pricing of our fuel, and it's coming at a time when even EPRA, the regulator, has published 11 regulations on petroleum alone. Right. And I think they have given up to 1st of March for people to give in their input. So we are staring at a serious crisis powered by fuel.
All right. Literally listening to you, Mr. Mutoro, of course, the Ministry of Petroleum has maintained its stand, saying that the pricing formula is something that is in the public domain. On the same account, the Ministry of Petroleum has indicated that what Kenya is getting international, we actually source our petroleum products from the international markets, and crude prices have been going up, and they've literally stepped aside and said it is beyond us. I don't know, what would be your recommendation for this, Madam Stella?
I think, first of all, I want to agree with Mutoro that we may want to reduce some of the taxes that we impose on oil in Kenya, and that with an understanding that it affects the different sectors of the economy, as Mutoro has elaborately explained. The reason why we must do this is because at the end of the day, we need to be aware of the kind of society we are operating and the kind of economic situation we are operating in. He has mentioned a number of areas, and one of the biggest areas that we must be extremely concerned about now is that when citizens do not have sufficient resources to be able to cover their nutritional needs, this definitely affects the nutrition indices. At a time when we're dealing with COVID-19 and there are rumors that we may or may not be having the mutant strain in the country, one of the things that you really desperately need in order to be able to cope with COVID, because it's never treated, is proper nutrition. So if Kenyans cannot afford food, we are basically saying that they are on their way to their deathbeds. If Kenyans cannot be able to sustain their livelihoods, then basically the roads we are building are not going to be of use to anybody. So I am in agreement that we need to reduce the taxes on oil. We need to find a way of ensuring that at least the most essential components of the economy do not depend entirely on the prices of oil. And Kimosop had mentioned that a time like this requires leaders who have a focus on economic recovery. And I think that's one of the things that our leaders must put their minds on and ensure that they're beginning to negotiate better on our behalf and have, conversations that will actually put in mind the needs of the citizen and prepare in ways that are going to then enable the citizens to at least survive this period as we find long-term solutions to our economic situation.
Interesting comments there, Madam Stella. And Mr. Kimosop, of course, various varied reactions to this matter. Perhaps what would be the best outcome in this current economic turmoil we find ourselves in?
Thanks, Abby. Allow me to bring in economic theory. I know when I talk about economic theory in a TV conversation, I might get some of your viewers to sleep, but nonetheless, we went to school. So this is the time when if you look at you look at the productive sectors of the economy, areas that when you put in 1 shilling, when you talk about multiplier effect, then the returns on your investment is high. So, so at this point, we need to look at the productive sectors that the turnaround or the reinvestment, the return on investment is going to be high. Number 2 is that this is the time where you look at, as I alluded earlier, is that you cannot rule out the place of political leadership. If you look at the Brookings reports, this is the think tank that's based in Washington, looking at how to get Africa's economies going. They really buttress the importance of governance. And this is the message that I really appeal to the political class. This is the time where we need to rally the energies of our country towards getting our economy back. Abby, I was just looking at social media. Today there was a rally in western part of our country. And you can imagine it's on Tuesday and looking at those multitudes, young people turning up, a weekday, telling you very clearly that we have a lot of energies that are yet to be directed towards productive sectors of our economy. So I would really reinforce the importance of a focused political leadership, lenses entirely focused on revamping our economy. And as I pointed out, putting our monies where the returns will be high. I want to say something that the IMF has approved a facility for Kenya. And I would want to say that the amounts, such amounts of money, if they are directed to the sectors, look at the livestock sector. The returns, if you put 1 shilling to the livestock sector, data shows that its multiplier effect is 4. So one of the things that I would want to point out, Abby, at this point is that I know we cannot rule out discussing an important subject like the public debt. So fiscal consolidation is an important thing. And this is one of the things that concerns me. If you look at the headlines in our papers, from page 1 to 4, it is politics, politics. Yet really what it matters is bread on the table of Kenyans. So for me, it is getting our conversation back. And I also appeal to the media. Thanks, Abby, to KTN for bringing such programs. But we need this program from the evening coming to the morning so that we can direct our energies to productivity and reduce the dividend that we've given to our politics.
Thank you, Mr. Kimosop. And you did touch on a live wire when you mentioned that We've seen politicians crisscrossing the country, and the huge crowds of the youth are actually making time to be there. And I'd like
on a weekday.
On a weekday. I'd like us to just listen to ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi, who is also a former finance minister and a former vice president of Kenya. He had some interesting insights on just what could be the antidote to this.
Kupoteza kazi 2 million jobs in the last 1 year ni pigo kubwa sana, na hata wale wanafanya biashara ya kama kwa hawking na nini, they must be given space kufanya biashara. Hii mambo tena ya wanasiasa kama sisi, kila siku tunazurura, wewe umeweka bidhaa zako pale, magari yangu yanakuja yanakanyaga hizo bidhaa, unapoteza pesa hapo na unataka ulishe familia. Haya pia lazima tuangalie na tukomeshe. Let us do politics in a decent way. People must earn a living. Unajua Kenya hii sasa kuna wanaume ambao wamemaliza mwaka mmoja na hata wajanunulia bibi yake nguo ya Christmas. Kuna wanaume Kenya hii saa hii, akiona mke wake anasema nataka kwenda saloon, anaanza kubabaika kwa sababu hana pesa ya kumpatia ili mke wake aende kwa saloon, kwa sababu hali ni ngumu kwa kila mtu. Kwa hivyo ni jukumu letu tuangalie na tushikane na tubadilishe ili Kenya iwe stable both politically and economically.
Very hard questions being raised there by Musalia Mudavadi, and could clearly see an agitated national leader there addressing multitudes of people on the ground. Back to you, Stella. Perhaps what would be the best outcome when it comes to creating jobs? Because we are a very endowed country when it comes to having a youthful population that can be a demographic dividend for Kenya if it is well utilized. And it is one thing for politicians to take to the stages and say it is not right how the politics are being conducted, but on the other end of the stick, of the coin actually, you find the same politicians hoping to get very large crowds.
I think one of the indicators of whether or not the youth are busy or not is by how many of them show up in a rally. So I'm actually glad we're having this conversation and that we have all noted that there are very many young people, they are already being used for violence several months before the election. So this should give us an indication of how much trouble you're going to have if these young people do not find themselves in gainful employment or in some form of activity that keeps them busy. But having said that, we must start thinking through new business models. And young people have been quite innovative, Abby, in terms of finding ways of getting work that does not necessarily require them to walk into an office, for example, and that can survive the disruptions that COVID has caused. Part of that includes the gig economy, where they're able to actually do a lot of work from home and earn some little money. A good number of them have been doing businesses on drop shipping and other businesses online that does not necessarily require them to have an entire building or pay rent, and they're making incomes out of that. KRA has been working very hard to reach them and take taxes from them. Majority of the micro enterprises and small businesses established by young people were actually shut down after COVID, and they were not able to survive even the first few months of COVID. So one of the actions that a government like Kenya's government must take now is to ensure that they support the few businesses that have remained and enable them to be able to promote business models that are going to be able to create more employment for more people and provide incomes, even meager incomes, to as many young people as possible. The other thing that we must do as a nation is to begin thinking through new supply chains. And the reason why this is extremely important is because we have had, supply chains that we have been dependent on, and we struggle to
our traditional markets,
we struggle to actually change our ways. But these are new conversations that we must have. I did mention to you before we started the show that with the taking effect of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, new opportunities have presented themselves. Kenya in the region actually stands a very good opportunity because we are at a very vantage position based on our production, based on the market share that we enjoy in the region, and we should take advantage of that to ensure that produce from our citizens, whether it is farmers, whether it is our industries, there are not many, actually find their way into the regional markets, and that we make money out of that, because it is having money in the hands of citizens. It is the spending power of citizens that fuels the economy. When citizens have nothing to buy and sell from, when they have nothing to exchange, then we have troubles. We definitely have to promote our industries. We are allowing a lot of business to leave this continent and go outside, and yet we can actually be able to take advantage of. One of my biggest heroes from this COVID situation, Abi, is a Nigerian young man who established that we could not import anything at the beginning of COVID, and therefore this continent was going to run out of toothpicks in a very short while because we import a lot of toothpicks. I mean, we have trees in the continent. So this young man decided to now start producing toothpicks, and he made quite a fortune out of toothpicks when every other person was rushing towards, creating masks. Are we able to engage in that kind of thinking, to rethink how we supply goods, check what we have in the continent, sell amongst ourselves and make as much money as possible, keep it within the continent, and see if we can inject all that into our domestic resource mobilization and promote development? While at it, let us promote innovation. There are many other ways through which young people can make money. You've seen content creators, thriving throughout this period. Some of them also struggled, but then a good number of them thrived, and many, many young people have found ways to actually use those as outlets. How do we harness the opportunities and make sure that we create jobs for everyone? While at it, think through also how to ensure that the Mama Mboga has ways of getting her produce to those who are in need of it without necessarily having to endanger her life by going to a marketplace, for example. I think those are things we can do without necessarily stealing the opportunity from Mama Mboga and now causing, Mama Mboga to give up her business to the likes of, those, and I don't want to mention names here so that I don't get KTN in trouble, but we have very many delivery companies, huge ones, that are now taking over the business that Mama Mboga had when someone could walk to their store and collect vegetables to go and cook at home. So just thinking through all those and ensuring that we are creative enough and that we are thoughtful enough for every person in the economy to get something small. Because right now, it is survival. And let's try as much as possible to make it survival for everyone and not just survival for the fittest and the fattest.
All right. Thank you so much, Madam Stella Gara. Well, lady and gentlemen, we want to quickly take another breather where we shall be coming back with my other two panelists just to also get their insights around how do we navigate through the storm that has seen the economy in the doldrums. All this on the front row after this quick break.